You don't need a whole year to change your life. In fact, thinking long-term might be exactly why you keep feeling stuck in the same place. 90 days might not seem like much, but that exact time limit is what forces real decisions, shuts down internal negotiations, and reveals who you truly are when there's no escape. That's when transformation happens, or doesn't. The problem isn't a lack of discipline or motivation, it's trying to grow without closing old chapters, keeping incompatible identities alive, and expecting different results. Real growth requires cutting, focus, and a clear execution window. In today's video, you'll understand why the elite uses short, intense, and strategic cycles to change identity, energy, focus, and results, and how you can apply the same model without relying on willpower. 1. Why 90 days work and a full year fails. Most people decide to change their lives by thinking in permanent terms, almost like they're signing a lifelong contract with themselves. That's the first psychological mistake. When the brain realizes there's no clear finish line, it shifts into self-protection mode. The initial motivation may show up, but it quickly turns into silent resistance, procrastination, and self-sabotage. The elite doesn't think in terms of eternal change. They think in short, closed, and intense windows of full execution because they understand how the mind actually works under controlled pressure. 90 days work because they drastically reduce decision fatigue. Instead of waking up every day debating whether or not to stick to the plan, the decision has already been made. There's no, let's see how I feel today. There's a defined period where the rule is to execute, not to interpret emotions. A year is too abstract for the emotional brain. 90 days are concrete, measurable, and close enough to create urgency without feeling like a prison. Behavioral science backs this up. A series of observational studies reviewed by the Harvard Business Review in 2019 followed professionals using short goal cycles, usually between 8 and 12 weeks, measuring focus, adherence, and execution quality. The method included performance tracking, weekly self-evaluations, and objective delivery metrics. The result was clear. Shorter cycles significantly improved consistency, reduced dropouts, and enhanced clarity of priorities, mainly because the brain didn't have to maintain motivation indefinitely. The common mistake is calling this a new lifelong habit. The right way to treat it is as an identity sprint. During 90 days, you're not just checking off tasks, you're testing a specific version of who you are. You act, decide, and position yourself as someone different, without the psychological weight of thinking it has to last forever. It's a serious, intense experiment with a clear time limit, which paradoxically increases your commitment. That's why high-performance executives often change more in a single quarter than most people do in 3 years. It's not talent or superior willpower, it's radical focus with clear boundaries. They choose fewer things, eliminate distractions without mercy, and go into full execution mode for a short set time, knowing exactly when it ends. That creates clarity, speed, and a strong sense of identity that's powerful enough to generate visible results fast. Once you understand that, the question changes completely. It's no longer, can I keep this up forever? The question becomes, who do I become if I execute this for 90 days without compromise? That mental reframing removes the emotional burden, reduces fear of failure, and gets you moving. And movement, when well-directed, always beats endless intention without action. 2. The fatal mistake, trying to improve without killing old versions. Most people think the problem is a lack of discipline, when in reality the problem is too many active identities at the same time. You try to move forward, but you're dragging old versions of yourself pulling in the opposite direction. It's like hitting the gas with the parking brake still on. It's not laziness, it's not lack of talent, it's unresolved internal conflict between who you were and who you're trying to become. Real improvement doesn't happen by layering things on top of an old identity. It happens when incompatible versions die. Psychology is clear on this. Identity precedes behavior. If you still see yourself as someone who procrastinates, gets distracted, or over-explains everything, any attempt to act differently will require constant force. And constant force always loses to old habits when your energy runs low. That's why trying to improve slowly without eliminating old patterns usually fails. Incompatible behaviors don't peacefully coexist. One of them always wins. You don't build focus while keeping chaotic environments. You don't build leadership while clinging to the need for approval. You don't build wealth while making small emotional decisions every day. Something has to go for something new to come in. This is where a simple but brutally honest tool comes in, the identity kill list. You choose 3 behaviors that belong to your old version, 3 environments that reinforce that outdated identity, and 3 people who, consciously or not, sabotage your new version. It's not about moral judgment, it's about psychological coherence. If your environment pulls you backward, it needs to be removed or neutralized. Elite performers understand this better than anyone. They don't start by asking, what can I add? They start by asking what needs to be removed for this to work. And before optimizing, they eliminate. Before accelerating, they cut dead weight. That creates mental, emotional, and energetic space for the new identity to sustain itself without heroic effort. If you constantly feel tired but never transformed, that's a clear sign you're trying to evolve without burying old versions. And as long as your life still comfortably accommodates who you used to be, who you want to become will never have the real space to exist. Growth requires visible sacrifice, not just silent intention. 3. The 1% map. Energy, focus, money, status. Almost everyone tries to start with money, and that's exactly why most people fail. The 1% operates with a different mindset. Every real transformation follows a predictable causal chain. First energy, then focus, then money, and only at the end comes status. When someone tries to reverse this order, they end up forcing results that don't last. Willpower doesn't create lasting wealth, psychological structure does. Energy isn't emotional motivation, it's cognitive capacity to make good decisions repeatedly. Classic studies on ego depletion show that when mental energy drops, decision quality drops with it. Tired people don't make bad choices because of weak character. They make them because the brain switches to autopilot. The 1% protects energy as a strategic asset because they know that a series of bad decisions is expensive. That's why there's a simple rule that almost no one follows. If your energy doesn't change in the first 14 days, the plan is wrong. It's not a lack of discipline, it's a design flaw. A good plan generates more clarity, more presence, and more focus quickly. If it only generates exhaustion, frustration, and resistance, you're not building leverage. You're just demanding more from the same old pattern. Here's where most people get confused. Income is delayed decisions, not the direct result of effort. The money coming in today is a consequence of choices made weeks, months, or even years ago. Working more without improving decision quality just speeds up burnout. The 1% understands that high-quality focus, supported by stable energy, creates decisions that quietly compound over time. Status, finally, is just the visible side effect of this process. It isn't chased, it appears. When someone seeks recognition before building energy and focus, they end up performing for others instead of building for themselves. The elite thinks the opposite way. First, I control my state, then my direction, then the financial results show up, the rest follows naturally, no need to chase it. If you're honest with yourself, you'll notice where you've been trying to skip steps. Every time money becomes a direct obsession, something above it has failed. Fix the foundation and the top will organize itself. This is the real map, the one used by people playing the game at a different level. 4. The invisible routine of the 1%. There's a popular illusion that the 1% wins because they wake up at 5 a.m., drink lemon water, and follow the perfect morning routine. That's entertainment, not strategy. What really sets the elite apart isn't morning optimization. It's total control over the day's transitions. Most people lose energy not from hard work, but from poorly managed moments between tasks. Transitions are those moments when you go from sleep to your day, from meals to work, from work to rest. That's when the mind starts to negotiate, get distracted, and lose focus. The 1% eliminates this negotiation. They don't decide each day when to sleep, what to eat, or how to start working. Those decisions are already locked in, so they don't waste cognitive energy on small choices. Fixed rules for sleeping, eating, and starting work act like mental rails. When there's no decision to make, there's no mental strain. Behavioral psychology studies show that the fewer irrelevant decisions a person has to make, the more strategic energy is available for what really matters. Focus doesn't appear because of motivation. It appears when the noise disappears. That's why the elite seem calm even under pressure. It's not the absence of problems, it's the absence of micro-chaos. They don't start their day asking, "How am I feeling?" The day begins the same way almost every time because predictability creates emotional stability. That stability becomes clarity, and clarity becomes a silent competitive advantage. One simple tool puts this into practice: the default day framework. You define a standard day with no negotiation that runs automatically when nothing unusual happens. Wake up time, first task, basic meals, and end of day routine are already decided. This doesn't trap you, it frees you. Creativity and strategy show up because your mental energy isn't being drained by the basics. If you feel like you work a lot but rarely think deeply, the problem isn't ambition, it's too many small decisions scattered throughout the day. Fix your transitions, and focus will show up without heroic effort. What the 1% does silently isn't glamorous, but it's exactly what supports everything that looks impressive from the outside. 5. Communication that creates instant status. Most people believe that speaking well means saying a lot, explaining everything, and making sure no one misunderstands. The 1% does the exact opposite. They say less, but close more loops. Status doesn't come from verbal volume, it comes from decisiveness. When someone talks too much, it gives the impression they're still thinking. When they speak briefly and with precision, it communicates they've already decided. In practice, this shows up as short, declarative, action-oriented sentences. Instead of justifying, the 1% states. Instead of promising, they execute and inform. Phrases like, "Here's what I'll do," end discussions because they signal responsibility and direction. There's no implicit request for validation, there's internal command and external commitment, which instantly shifts the conversation dynamic. This isn't charisma, it's social perception. In American corporate environments, executives associate clear, direct communication with leadership because the human brain interprets decisive speech as a sign of competence. People who speak objectively reduce ambiguity, and ambiguity creates anxiety in others. The person who removes anxiety becomes a reference point, even without raising their voice. There's also a conscious control of response time. The 12-second rule works as a brutal filter. No response should go beyond that time limit unless there's an explicit invitation to continue. This forces you to think before speaking, choose what matters, and cut emotional noise. When someone says little, people listen more. When someone over-explains, they lose weight. Here's the core point. High-status communication doesn't try to convince. It structures the space. It doesn't react. It defines. Those who master this don't need to compete for attention because they naturally become the center of the conversation. And when you become the center, opportunities begin to revolve around you without you having to chase them. If you feel like you work hard but aren't recognized, take a look at how you speak. Lack of status is rarely about lack of skill. Most of the time, it's too many words trying to make up for a lack of clear decisions. Fix that, and your social game will change fast. 6. The 90-day social detox. Most people believe that to grow, they need more motivation, more inspiration, more external stimulation. That's the trap. The biggest leap almost always comes from reducing exposure, not from adding emotional fuel. The human brain wasn't built to handle a constant flow of opinions, news, conflict, and comparison. The 1% understands this early and protects their mental space as a strategic asset. Environments shape behavior far more than intention. It doesn't matter how badly you want to change. If the environment around you reinforces old patterns, change becomes a daily struggle. Research by Stanford's Behavioral Design Lab shows that small changes in environment lead to more consistent behavioral shifts than stated willpower. When environment and intention conflict, environment wins. That's why the 90-day social detox isn't emotional isolation, it's cognitive recalibration. Zero consumption of reactive content, endless feeds, drama-filled news, empty arguments, and stimuli that hijack your attention. It's not forever, it's a closed window. 90 days where your mind stops being pulled outward constantly and begins to reorganize internally. The effect runs deeper than it seems. After about 30 days without constant noise, your sense of time changes. Hours feel longer, focus deepens, and ambition stops being fueled by external comparison. It begins to come from internal clarity. People who take this break often report a strange feeling at first, almost like boredom. In reality, it's the brain relearning how to be present. This mental space creates something rare, productive silence. That's when big decisions begin to emerge without pressure. You start noticing which conversations drain you, which content distorts your thinking, and which environments no longer fit the version of you that's emerging. It's not rejection of the world, it's a conscious choice of exposure. If your mind is always full, but your life rarely changes, the problem isn't lack of ability, it's too much disorganized input. Reduce the noise for 90 days and watch what naturally rises to the surface. What remains when the noise disappears is what truly matters. 7. Money as a psychological byproduct. There's a subtle shift that separates those who build wealth from those who just chase it. Most people keep money at the center of their minds as a direct, almost obsessive goal. The 1% does the opposite. They understand that wealth doesn't come from chasing money, but from the ability to think at scale. When money becomes the main focus, thinking shrinks. When it becomes a consequence, thinking expands. Thinking at scale means moving away from direct effort and into a multiplication mindset. It's asking less, how much does this pay? And more, does this keep working without me? That question changes everything. People stuck in short-term gains trade time for money indefinitely. People who build wealth think in terms of structures, systems, and decisions that keep producing, even when their personal energy isn't present. Psychology explains this clearly. Longitudinal studies that tracked individuals from childhood to adulthood showed a strong correlation between long-term mindset and greater accumulated wealth. Not because of superior intelligence, but because of the ability to delay gratification, plan for consequences, and make less emotional decisions in the short term. Money shows up as a side effect of repeated choices made with a long-range vision. In practice, this becomes a simple and uncomfortable rule. Every important decision should answer whether it scales without you. If the answer is no, it's just a task, not construction. Working hard isn't the issue. The issue is working on things that die the moment you stop. The 1% does fewer things but chooses the ones that keep breathing on their own. A direct tool for this is the leverage audit. You analyze where your time, capital, media, and people are being used. Time is the most limited and least scalable resource. Capital and media expand reach. The right people multiply decisions. This diagnosis quickly reveals whether you're building leverage or just staying busy with tasks that seem productive. When this shift happens, something interesting occurs. Anxiety about money decreases. Not because money doesn't matter, but because control increases. The less emotional you become about money, the better your decisions get. And the better the decisions, the more predictable the growth. Sustainable wealth rarely comes from chasing. It shows up when the right mental system is in place. 8. The right discomfort versus the wrong one. There's a dangerous belief that all discomfort leads to growth. That's false, and the 1% knows it firsthand. A lot of discomfort without clear direction doesn't make you stronger, it wears you out. Average people take pride in suffering, sacrificing, and always being tired. High performers are suspicious of that. They don't avoid discomfort, but they choose very precisely which discomfort is worth enduring. The wrong discomfort is vague, emotional, and lacks clear feedback. It's working too hard without knowing if you're making progress. It's exposing yourself socially without discernment. It's accepting constant pressure without any metric for improvement. This type of discomfort gives the illusion of effort, but doesn't produce real growth. Over time, it leads to cynicism, energy loss, and the sense of being stuck in a cycle that goes nowhere. The right discomfort is different. It comes with measurable feedback. The 1% seeks uncomfortable situations where there's a clear cause and effect. If I do X for 7 days, something measurable needs to change. If nothing changes, that's not leverage. It's just misdirected suffering. Real growth always leaves a visible trail, even if it's small at first. That's why there's a simple, unemotional rule. If there's no clear metric within 7 days, it's not the right kind of discomfort. It might seem noble, it might look disciplined, but it's not moving the needle. The 1% walks away from this kind of effort without guilt, because they know blind persistence is just stubbornness with a good reputation. A classic example is burnout. Burnout doesn't come from working hard. It comes from effort with no direction, no tangible return, and no sense of progress. Burned out people aren't weak. They're putting energy into areas that don't give clarity back. When the discomfort is right, it may exhaust the body, but it organizes the mind. If you're always tired but feeling less confident, that's a signal. Something in your effort is poorly calibrated. The right discomfort, though demanding, strengthens your identity. The wrong one drains and confuses. Knowing the difference between the two is one of the rarest and most profitable skills a person can develop. 9. The final test. Are you unrecognizable or just tired? A common mistake during an intense period of effort is confusing exhaustion with transformation. Most people think change is about feeling different on the inside. But real change usually starts from the outside. Before you notice it, the environment responds. People treat you differently. Conversations shift in tone, expectations adjust. If none of that is happening, chances are you're just more tired, not different. Real change is rarely comfortable or immediately validated by your own perception. The brain takes time to update its self-image, but the world doesn't. It reacts quickly to new patterns of behavior. That's why the 1% uses external signals as reference points, not internal feelings. Emotions lie. Social reactions rarely do. There are 3 very clear external signs. First is different respect. Fewer explanations are expected, fewer questions are asked. Second is strategic silence. You no longer feel the need to justify decisions or share plans. Third is invitations. Opportunities show up without you having to offer yourself. When these signs appear, something structural has shifted, even if you haven't processed it internally yet. To lock that in, there's the 90-day identity review. It's not a list of achievements, it's a tolerance analysis. What became impossible to tolerate after these 90 days? What conversations stopped making sense? What environments started to feel uncomfortable? What old behaviors began to seem strange? This reveals more about your transformation than any external metric ever could. The final test is simple and uncomfortable. If your old life still fits perfectly into your new routine, nothing really changed. Transformation creates friction with the past. It makes certain patterns not just unwanted, but unlivable. When that happens, you don't need motivation to continue. The old version of you just stops making sense. In the end, the goal was never to be busier, more tired, or more disciplined. The goal has always been to become someone who can't live the old way anymore. Once you reach that point, there's no going back, because there's nothing to go back to. That's real change. Everything else is just well-intentioned effort.